The sea was calm that evening, its endless stretch of blue melting into the horizon where the sun set in soft orange fire. Against that backdrop, a yacht gleamed like a palace afloat. Its polished deck caught the fading light, reflecting it in golden streaks. The vessel was not just any yacht, it was a symbol of wealth and hidden promises. Guests were invited not for a voyage, but for an experience. Among them was Arya, a woman who never cared for glittering shows of wealth. She preferred quiet cafes, old books, and the comfort of a small life. Yet here she was, clutching a silver invitation card that bore only a name, the Luminara. The yacht was owned by someone powerful, someone she had only heard whispers about. His name was Damien Hale, a man with influence stretching across cities and oceans, a man said to have a taste for games of seduction. Arya almost laughed at herself as she stepped aboard. She was no socialite, no heiress. She had been invited almost by mistake through a friend who could not attend. Yet the moment she entered, she realized mistakes rarely happened in Damien's world. The air smelled of salt and champagne. Laughter and music floated across the open deck, where guests in silk gowns and tailored suits mingled. Every detail shimmered: crystal glasses, golden lanterns, and tables laid with delicacies she could barely name. Arya moved carefully among them, her simple black dress drawing less attention than the glittering women around her. She thought she could hide, slip into the background, and leave unnoticed. But then she felt it, the weight of someone's gaze. At the far end of the deck, leaning casually against the railing, was Damien himself. Tall, sharply dressed, he seemed untouched by the noise around him. His eyes, dark as midnight waters, locked on hers as if he had been waiting. The corner of his mouth curved in a knowing half-smile, and Arya felt her pulse quicken. She looked away, pretending to study the sea, but soon he was moving through the crowd, every step unhurried yet precise. Guests greeted him as he passed, but his focus never left her. And then he was there, standing close enough for her to catch his scent, warm spice and ocean air. "You don't belong here," he said softly, though his tone carried no insult. It was more like an observation, almost a compliment. Arya met his gaze, steadying herself. "And yet, here I am." His smile deepened. "Yes, you are. That makes you far more interesting than anyone else tonight." Before she could answer, a waiter approached with a tray. Damien took 2 glasses of champagne, handing one to her. Their fingers brushed, and for a moment, the sound of music and laughter faded. Arya sipped, trying to appear calm. "I'm not like your other guests. I don't have business to offer you, or secrets to trade." "Good," Damien replied smoothly. "That means you'll be honest." Something in his voice carried weight, as though honesty was rarer than gold in his world. He leaned slightly closer, his words meant only for her. "Do you know why I invite people to this yacht?" She shook her head. "Because out here," he said, glancing at the sea, "people reveal who they are. Away from the city, away from walls and roles, they loosen their masks." His eyes returned to hers. "And some are bold enough to play dangerous games." Arya's breath caught. She should have laughed, dismissed his words as the arrogant charm of a powerful man. But something about him, the intensity of his gaze, the quiet confidence, made her wonder what kind of game he meant. As the evening stretched on, Damien did not leave her side. He introduced her to no one else, as if the crowd was merely a backdrop for their meeting. He asked questions that were simple but sharp: what she dreamed of, what she feared, what she desired. His presence was steady, magnetic, as though he was slowly pulling her into a tide she couldn't resist. By the time the stars came out, Arya realized she hadn't thought once of leaving. The yacht, the party, the glittering crowd, all of it blurred. Only Damien remained clear. And when the music softened and guests began drifting below deck, Damien leaned in once more. His voice was low, teasing, and full of promise. "The night is long," he said. "Stay, and you might discover why the Luminara is more than a yacht. It's a place of secrets. A place of seduction." Arya felt the sea breeze on her skin, cool against the heat rising inside her. For the first time in her life, she didn't want to play safe. She wanted to see where this tide would carry her. The night deepened, and the party's noise softened as more guests slipped below deck to explore hidden lounges or their private suites. The main deck was quieter now, the lanterns glowing like captured stars. Arya leaned against the railing, the sea stretching endlessly before her, and wondered why she had not already left. She had planned to spend only an hour, maybe two. Yet something kept her anchored here, something, or rather, someone. Damien returned to her side as if he had only stepped away for a moment, though she hadn't noticed him leave. He handed her a glass of red wine, richer and darker than the champagne she'd been drinking earlier. "Champagne is for crowds," he said, almost reading her thoughts. "Wine is for conversations meant to last." Arya accepted it, her fingers brushing his again. "You seem to have a rule for everything." He chuckled softly. "Not rules. Preferences. Rules are cages. Preferences are choices." His gaze lingered on her, sharp yet warm. "And I prefer honest company." The way he said it made her chest tighten. She was not used to being seen so clearly, not by strangers. And yet Damien seemed to strip away her defenses with nothing more than his eyes. "Why me?" she asked at last, her voice low. "You could have any woman here. Women far more beautiful, more suited to your world." Damien leaned closer, his arm brushing hers as he set his glass down on the railing. "Because they are predictable. And you are not." Before she could reply, he gestured for her to follow him. "Come. I want to show you something." Arya hesitated only a heartbeat before stepping after him. He led her along the deck, past the clusters of guests who barely noticed them, and down a narrow stairway. They emerged on a smaller, private deck at the yacht's stern. Here, the world was quiet. The sea stretched in silver waves under the moonlight, the air cooler, cleaner. "This is where I come when I want to think," Damien said, resting one hand on the railing. "No noise. No masks. Just the sea." Arya joined him, setting her wine glass down. "It's beautiful." "Beautiful," he echoed softly, but his eyes weren't on the water. They were on her. The silence between them thickened, not uncomfortable but charged. The faint hum of the yacht's engines, the whisper of waves, they became a rhythm beneath the tension. Damien turned fully toward her, his expression unreadable, though his intent was unmistakable. "You're nervous," he said. She laughed lightly, though her heart was racing. "Wouldn't you be? I hardly know you." "You know enough," he murmured. "You know I want you here. And you know you want to stay." The directness of his words sent a flush to her skin. He wasn't wrong. She did want to stay, though she couldn't explain why. Perhaps it was curiosity, perhaps danger, perhaps the thrill of being noticed in a way she had never been before. He stepped closer, close enough that she felt the heat of his presence. His hand brushed against hers on the railing, not quite holding it, just testing the space between them. "Tell me something true, Arya," he said. "Something no one else here knows." Her mind raced. She could have told him something simple, something safe. Instead, the words slipped out before she could stop them. "I don't feel like I belong anywhere. Not here, not even in my own life sometimes." For a moment, Damien's expression softened, stripped of charm. "That," he said quietly, "is exactly why you belong here tonight." His hand covered hers then, warm and certain, and she didn't pull away. The connection was simple, yet it burned through her like fire. The sound of footsteps from the upper deck broke the moment. Damien's gaze lingered on her a second longer before he released her hand. "Come back up when you're ready," he said, his voice low, promising. "But know this, Arya, when the sea calls, it never lets go. And neither do I." He left her there, standing alone beneath the moonlight, her heart beating wild and unsteady. She looked at the waves, felt the imprint of his touch still on her skin, and realized she was already caught in something far deeper than she had imagined. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the yacht, golden and dazzling against the polished decks. The party from the night before had stretched until dawn, but Arya had barely slept. She had lain awake in her cabin, replaying every word Damien had spoken, every glance, every touch. His presence clung to her mind like the sea breeze clung to her skin. When she finally stepped onto the deck, she found the world transformed. Gone was the glittering night of gowns and champagne. Now the yacht carried a quieter rhythm, staff preparing breakfast, the sea stretching endlessly calm, and only a few early risers wandering the deck. Damien was already there, of course, as though he had never left. He stood near the bow, dressed in casual linen, yet still commanding the space with ease. When his eyes found hers, it felt as though the morning belonged only to them. "Good morning," he said, his voice smooth as the sea. "You look restless." Arya gave a small smile. "Perhaps yachts aren't made for sleeping." He tilted his head. "Or perhaps some people are too busy thinking to sleep." She flushed, unable to hide the truth. Damien stepped closer, offering his arm with a teasing curve of his lips. "Come. Walk with me." They strolled along the deck, the sea wind tugging gently at her hair. For a while, silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable but deliberate. Damien seemed to enjoy drawing out her anticipation, letting her wonder what he would say next. Finally, he stopped near a shaded lounge where breakfast was being served, platters of exotic fruit, fresh pastries, and sparkling water that caught the light. "Do you know what this yacht truly is, Arya?" he asked, gesturing to the luxury around them. "A floating palace," she offered lightly. He smiled, shaking his head. "A stage. People come here and perform the roles they want others to believe. Some act powerful, some act desirable, some act innocent. But the sea strips away masks. It shows who they really are." His gaze locked on hers, sharp and unyielding. "So the question is, who are you, when no one is watching?" The directness of the question left her breathless. She tried to laugh it off, but Damien wasn't smiling. He was studying her as though her answer mattered more than she realized. "I'm not sure," she admitted at last. "Maybe I've never had the chance to find out." Damien leaned closer, his voice lowering to a murmur. "Then consider this yacht your chance. But understand, once you step into the game, you don't get to walk away unchanged." A shiver raced through her. "What kind of game?" "The oldest kind," he said simply. "Seduction. Power. Desire. The game where two people see how far they're willing to go, and how much of themselves they're willing to reveal. Arya's pulse quickened. She had thought last night was chance, a spark in the dark. Now she realized it was only the beginning, and Damien was not a man who played carelessly. "Why me?" she whispered again, unable to stop herself. "Because," he said, brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek, "you don't yet know how dangerous you are." Before she could respond, a group of guests appeared, laughing loudly as they approached the breakfast table. Damien stepped back with practiced ease, his mask sliding into place as he greeted them with charm. Yet his eyes found hers across the space, holding her captive even in silence. Later, when the crowd dispersed, he rejoined her with the air of a man who had been waiting patiently. He handed her a slice of melon, his fingers brushing hers again. "Every game has rules," he said. "Ours will have only one. You must always tell me the truth. No matter how small, no matter how dangerous." Arya stared at the fruit in her hand, then at the man before her. She knew she should refuse, laugh, excuse herself and leave the yacht before she was drawn in too deeply. But her voice betrayed her. "Then you must promise me the same," she said quietly. Damien's smile was slow, deliberate. "Done." The sea breeze lifted around them, carrying the scent of salt and promise. Arya realized, with both fear and anticipation, that she had just stepped into his game. And there was no turning back. The day stretched long and golden over the open sea. The yacht cut smoothly across the waves, its wake trailing white foam like a ribbon. Arya spent the afternoon wandering the decks, trying to steady her thoughts, but Damien's presence lingered with every step. His words from breakfast echoed in her mind: "The game has only one rule. Tell me the truth." She told herself she could resist it. That she could watch from the edges, laugh at his charm, and remain untouched. Yet when evening fell again and lanterns flickered across the decks, she found herself drawn back to him as if the sea itself carried her there. Damien was waiting near the piano lounge, where soft music floated in the air. He wore no jacket tonight, only a crisp shirt with the top buttons undone, revealing a trace of tanned skin. He looked less like the untouchable host and more like a man who could be dangerous in ways the glittering guests could never guess. "You came back," he said, his tone casual, though his eyes told another story. "I never left," Arya replied, surprising herself. He smiled, a slow curve that sent heat curling low in her chest. "Then come. I want to show you something different tonight." He led her past the lounge, past the laughing clusters of guests, and into one of the interior corridors. The sounds of the party faded behind them, replaced by the steady hum of the yacht. At last, he opened a door and ushered her inside. The room was nothing like the glittering decks above. It was darker, more intimate. Velvet drapes softened the walls, and a single table held a decanter of amber liquid. A wide window overlooked the sea, the moonlight spilling silver across the water. Arya stepped inside cautiously, her heartbeat quickening. "What is this place?" "My retreat," Damien said, closing the door behind them. "Where I bring only those who matter." The weight of the words made her breath catch. She turned toward the window, needing distance, but Damien was already beside her. His reflection in the glass seemed larger than life, his eyes fixed only on her. "You're still wondering why he said softly. Arya nodded, unable to deny it. "Because when you walked onto my yacht, you didn't try to impress anyone. You didn't play their games. You were, yourself." He leaned closer, his voice a low murmur against her ear. That is rare. And dangerous. Do you understand? Her skin tingled at his nearness. Dangerous how? Because it tempts me to stop pretending as well. She turned then, and their faces were suddenly close too close. His hand lifted, brushing lightly against her jaw, not a full touch, just the suggestion of one. Arya froze, every nerve awake, caught between wanting to step back and the deeper desire to lean in. Damien's eyes searched hers, and for a heartbeat, he seemed less like a man in control and more like one at risk of losing it. But instead of closing the distance, he stepped back, pouring 2 glasses of the amber liquid. To truth, he said, handing one to her. Arya accepted it, though her hand trembled. They drank in silence, the warmth of the liquor spreading through her chest. Finally, Damien set his glass aside. Tell me something true, Arya. Something you would never tell anyone else. She hesitated, her mind racing. This was the game, she knew the game he had promised. To play was to risk exposure, to let him see past the walls she'd built. I dream, she said slowly, of letting go. Of not being so careful, so controlled. Of doing something reckless, even if it scares me. Damien's gaze darkened, his jaw tightening. Then you've already begun. The tension between them thickened, almost unbearable. He stepped closer again, his hand brushing hers as he took her empty glass. This time, he did not pull away. His fingers lingered, warm, steady, as if daring her to break the moment. Arya's breath caught, her body leaning instinctively toward him. Yet before anything more could happen, he released her hand and turned toward the window, his voice lower now, almost rough. The night is still young, he said. But remember, every truth you give me has a cost. And sooner or later, I will ask for payment. His words hung between them, promise and warning alike. Arya stood in the soft light, her pulse racing, and realized that the line between play and reality had already blurred. The sun had dipped low into the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of crimson and gold. The yacht sailed smoothly across the calm sea, the water reflecting the fiery colors of the sunset. Guests mingled on the upper deck, but Arya barely noticed them. She had spent the afternoon avoiding Damien, trying to regain control over her racing thoughts. Yet every step she took, every glance she stole, reminded her that she could not escape him. As if sensing her restlessness, Damien appeared at the foot of the deck stairs. He moved with the ease of a predator who knows exactly what he wants. His gaze found hers instantly, and in that look, he communicated everything she both feared and desired. Why are you avoiding me? His voice was calm, but the undercurrent of something sharper made her shiver. I'm not avoiding you, she said, trying to sound firm. I'm considering the consequences. He laughed softly, the sound low and dangerous. Consequences. He took a step closer. Life is short, Arya. Sometimes the consequences are worth the risk. Her pulse quickened, and she felt a heat rise in her chest. She knew he was right. Every instinct in her body was drawn to him, yet a part of her screamed caution. Damien extended his hand, a silent challenge. Then take a chance with me. Arya hesitated, but the magnetic pull between them was too strong. Her hand trembled slightly as she placed it in his. He didn't rush, instead, he guided her toward the railing, the ocean stretching endlessly before them. Look at the sea, he said, his voice softer now. It's endless, mysterious, and full of hidden depths, much like people. And tonight, I want to explore yours. Her breath caught. There was no arrogance in his words, only an intoxicating intensity that made her heart race. Damien leaned closer, his hand brushing hers on the railing. The contact was fleeting, but enough to ignite a spark that ran through her like fire. Arya felt herself trembling, caught between fear and desire. "You know," he murmured, "most people would resist. Most people would play it safe. But not you. You feel it too, don't you?" Arya's lips parted, unsure how to respond. She did feel it, the pull, the tension, the unspoken promise of something deeper, something forbidden. "Yes," she admitted finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Good," he said, his lips curling into a slow, deliberate smile. "Then let's see how far we can go tonight." For a moment, they stood in silence, watching the sunset together. The air between them was charged, every small movement heavy with anticipation. Arya's mind raced, knowing that every step closer to him would make it harder to resist. Damien's hand slid to lightly brush a stray strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering at her jaw. The touch was subtle, yet it sent shivers down her spine. Arya's eyes met his, and she saw the same intensity mirrored back, an unspoken acknowledgement that the night would be transformative for them both. He leaned slightly closer, so close that she could feel his breath. "Do you trust me?" he asked, his voice low, almost a growl. Arya hesitated, but the answer was instinctive. I think I do." "That's enough for now," he said, stepping back with a teasing grin. "Trust is earned, not demanded. And tonight, we begin that game." The sound of a distant laugh from the upper deck reminded them both of the world around them, yet it felt irrelevant. For a moment, they existed in their own space, a world of heat, tension, and undeniable attraction. As the sky darkened into twilight, Damien offered his arm again, guiding her toward the interior lounge. The yacht's lights glimmered like fireflies, reflecting off the polished surfaces. Arya's pulse raced with anticipation, knowing that every step she took with him was a step deeper into his intoxicating world. And as they disappeared into the shadows of the luxurious interior, one thought consumed her: resisting Damien Hale would be impossible, and perhaps, she didn't want to. The yacht's interior was bathed in soft, golden light. Shadows danced across the walls, cast by the flickering lanterns and the gentle sway of the vessel. Arya followed Damien through the corridors, her pulse hammering with anticipation. Every step closer to him felt like stepping into a fire she both feared and craved. He led her into a secluded lounge, a room filled with plush velvet chairs, low tables, and soft music drifting from hidden speakers. The lights were dim, the atmosphere intimate, charged with an unspoken energy. Damien turned to face her fully, the casual ease of earlier replaced by a magnetic intensity that drew her in like gravity. "Do you know why I brought you here?" he asked, his voice low and smooth, but with an edge that made her shiver. Arya hesitated, then shook her head. "Because, you wanted me alone." He smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of lips. "Yes, and because I wanted to see if you could resist." Her chest tightened. "And can I?" Damien's gaze darkened, searching, teasing. "I don't think you will." He stepped closer, the space between them narrowing, until she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Every instinct screamed at her to step back, but desire rooted her to the spot. His eyes held hers, dark and commanding, and in them, she saw a challenge and an invitation. "Arya," he murmured, his hand lifting to brush a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering at her jaw. "Do you feel this?" She swallowed hard, words failing her. The answer was written in every racing heartbeat, every tremor of her body. She nodded slightly, unable to speak. Damien's hand moved lower, brushing her shoulder lightly, a touch electric against her skin. He leaned in closer, his lips hovering near hers, the promise of heat and danger between them. "I've been waiting for this," he whispered, voice thick with anticipation. Arya's breath hitched. She knew that in a moment, the line between temptation and reality would vanish. And part of her wanted it to. She wanted to feel the thrill of surrender, the intoxicating pull of someone who saw her entirely and desired her without restraint. Damien's hand slid down her arm, brushing hers as if testing the boundaries. Then, with deliberate slowness, he closed the distance. Their lips met in a soft, teasing kiss, gentle at first, almost exploratory. Arya's body responded instinctively, leaning into him, her hands trembling as she touched his chest. The kiss deepened, heated and demanding, a dance of desire that left them both breathless. Every brush of skin against skin sent sparks of electricity through her, igniting a fire she had not known could burn so fiercely. Damien's hands roamed cautiously, memorizing the curve of her waist, the soft line of her back. "You're mine tonight," he murmured against her lips, his breath warm and intoxicating. "No games, no masks, just us." Arya's mind spun, but her body answered without question. She felt a thrill in giving herself to the moment, in letting go of control. Every touch, every movement, every whisper carried a promise of more, pulling her deeper into Damien's world. The sound of the waves outside mingled with their shared breaths, a rhythm that matched the growing intensity between them. For the first time, Arya felt completely seen and entirely desired. The yacht, the party, the world beyond the sea, all of it faded. There was only the heat, the fire, and the irresistible pull of Damien Hale. When they finally parted, breathless and flushed, Damien's eyes held hers with a possessive intensity. "Tonight," he said, voice low and commanding, "we begin something neither of us will forget. And I promise, this is only the beginning." Arya's heart raced as she nodded, knowing he was right. She had crossed a line, ignited a fire, and there was no turning back. The game, the seduction, the irresistible pull between them, it had only just begun. And as Damien's hand lingered near hers, fingers brushing lightly in promise, she realized that the luxury yacht, the endless sea, and the night itself had become the perfect stage for their dangerous, intoxicating game. The night had fully claimed the sky, leaving only the silver glow of the moon to light the yacht. The party below deck had dwindled to a few stragglers, leaving the upper deck quiet, serene, and private. Arya stood at the railing, the cool breeze brushing her skin, the waves glimmering like liquid stars beneath her. Damien appeared silently beside her, his presence steady and magnetic. He offered her a glass of champagne, but she barely noticed. The night had a weight, a promise that neither of them could ignore. "You've changed since last night," he said softly, his eyes holding hers. "You're no longer watching, no longer careful. You're here, with me." Arya's lips curved in a nervous smile. "Perhaps I've decided some rules are meant to be broken." He laughed softly, the sound low and thrilling. "Good. That's the spirit I like." He moved closer, and she felt the heat radiating from him, the intensity in his gaze that pulled her like a tide she could not resist. For a long moment, they simply stood there, letting the wind and the waves speak for them. Then Damien brushed a hand lightly against hers, tracing the line of her fingers. "Do you trust me completely now?" Arya hesitated, caught between reason and desire. "Yes," she whispered. "I think I do." Then, he said, voice low and deliberate, let me show you what this night can truly be. He led her to a secluded corner of the deck, a place where the moonlight fell like silver upon the polished wood. The air was heavy with anticipation. Damien's hand found the small of her back, guiding her gently, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just the two of them. Their lips met again, softer this time at first, then deepening, becoming a language all their own. Every touch, every brush of skin, every whispered word fanned the flames between them. Arya felt herself surrendering to the moment, to the heat, to the man who had become an irresistible force in her life. Damien's hands traced her curves with careful attention, exploring without rushing, igniting a fire that left her breathless. The yacht, the endless sea, the quiet night all became secondary to the magnetic pull between them. She leaned into him, her body responding instinctively, fully, to every touch. You are intoxicating, he murmured against her lips, his voice thick with desire. And tonight, I want to show you everything you've been craving, everything you've been holding back. Arya shivered, not from the cool breeze but from the heat building within her. She had never felt such intensity, such electricity. Every glance, every brush of skin, every whisper held the promise of more, of surrender, of adventure, of discovery. As their hands intertwined and their lips met again, the world fell away completely. There were no masks, no games, no expectations, only the raw, undeniable pull of two people who had found something neither had anticipated but both had desired. Time seemed suspended as they moved together, exploring the closeness they had only just begun to taste. Arya's heart raced, yet she felt a strange clarity, a deep connection she had not expected. Damien's presence was commanding yet gentle, dangerous yet thrilling, and she realized that this night was not just about temptation, it was about trust, about surrender, about finally embracing desire without hesitation. When at last they parted, breathless and flushed, Damien rested his forehead against hers, his hands still lightly holding her. The night is ours, he said softly. And the game we started, has only just begun. Arya smiled, a mix of exhilaration and awe. I think I understand now, she said, her voice trembling. This is what it feels like to let go. He kissed her again, slow and deep, a promise that what they had shared was only the first chapter of something unforgettable. And as the moonlight danced across the deck, the yacht gliding silently through the silver waves, Arya realized she had found not just a night of seduction, but a connection that would linger long after the sea had claimed the horizon. The game, the temptation, the allure, it was no longer a question of resisting. It was a question of surrendering completely, letting the night and the man before her guide her into a world she had never dared to explore. And in that surrender, she discovered something thrilling, intoxicating, and utterly unforgettable.